What a great pleasure it is to welcome to What's Next Serame Taukobong, the Chief Executive Officer at Telkom. Serame, welcome to you, and how are you doing? I imagine 24 is off to a flying start for you, and you've got lots of projects on your hands at Telkom. How are you doing?
Aki, thank you very much. Good to see you again. I'm glad that this year I actually get to see you twice. I always see you at SatNag, so it's a blessing to see you twice in a year. Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
I think it's definitely 2020 more. And a leap year.
Absolutely.
My daughter was telling me that it's a leap year, so this year she gets to ask somebody out for a date for Valentine's.
Well, listen, they've got a few more days. She's got a few more days to do this. But absolutely, it was great to see you at SatNag, one of my favorite events. As I said, it's going to be a busy start, and already there's lots of action happening in the telecoms industry. Could you give us an overview of how you've seen this telecoms landscape in South Africa evolve over the past few years? Because you've certainly been in the business in different forms for several years now, even before spectrum was a sexy word, and you've seen a lot of things happening. So how do you see the landscape at the moment?
Well, I think it's interesting that you mentioned spectrum. I mean, Aki, for those of us who've been in the industry for the past 20 years, would have thought that we'd see spectrum as a thing of the past. But yeah, I mean, if you look at what happened in the past 5 years, I mean, to have spectrum being released just on the point of when it was most critically needed in the middle of COVID, and the role that spectrum release actually helped during COVID. I mean, the temporary spectrum that was issued in COVID, just the immense usage we saw that came out as a result of spectrum. And just if you look at what COVID did, and really the showing what pent up demand there was for usage of spectrum, I think it really just highlighted for me what reflects the usage of data in our country. And if you look at just what data usage has been happening in the past few years, I mean, I think mobile led significantly the usage of data, but COVID really drove that convergence of significant data usage. We've seen in terms of fixed data usage, the growth of fiber providers, yet small fiber providers, your kind of suburban fiber providers opening up. We've seen those consolidate quite significantly. What we've seen from a Telkom side is really how Telkom Mobile has grown a significant growth in data usage. I think Telkom has been geared up historically, really from, Telkom has been playing in fiber for over 40 years. Aki, as you know, with the migration from legacy copper into the whole fiber backbone. But that whole demand of fiber has been quite significant. I think it's ramped up. We're talking now almost like tera to petabytes of usage and heavy usage of data, not just at home, but in schools and businesses. And it's really gearing up for that usage. Just look at the landing of the Google Equinor cable. I mean, that cable alone, just that single Google cable, carries more data capacity than all the cables that have landed in the country over the past 20, 30 years. Just one single cable. So it just shows the amount of capacity that is coming into the country, reflecting the total usage of data. And who would have thought, Aki, in the many years that have been talking about this fixed mobile conversions, that's now a reality. The amount of data consumption. I always laugh that if you look at kids of today, when they walk into the house, the first thing they say is, "Hello, uncle, what's your password?" That's the new language.
Yes, that's true.
And that just reflects the tide of data consumption that we're talking of. I mean, I was looking just recently at the stuff that the guys in Openserve are doing. We are now talking of fiber to the room, not just fiber to the house. They've launched a new data proposition, which is why I can actually talk to you right now that the guys now even launch fiber to your room, not just to the house, but fibering each and every part of your room to make sure that the type of data speeds that you're getting, because it's no longer just, I want fiber to my house. You've got little Johnny doing fiber in one room, the gamer. You've got the daughter wants her speed. The wife works at home, she wants her speed. Dad wants to watch his rugby and soccer. He wants his speeds. So you're now getting to that level of usage. But it's not just to your high value customer. Even it's now a basic necessity for even your trader in rural, deep rural villages. The power that COVID showed us as well, that even in COVID times, where there was still good copper quality, you can run a Teams call with just 4 to 5 megabit speeds, because we were able to even use where we had good quality copper in deep rural areas to provide basic education needs for Teams calls in those outlying areas. So it's just the immense usage of data usage. It's no longer just for the privileged. Everybody requires data, and it's how we gear up ourselves as a society to deliver that.
That's fascinating. And of course, you as Telkom are very well positioned. You know, you've got these partnerships with these undersea cables, and of course, your vast fiber network. And correct me if I'm wrong, you've got the most fiber in the ground in the country as Telkom compared to anybody else. So you're very well positioned to get that fiber connectivity across the country, which is fantastic. You've really been a key player in South Africa's telecom sector for many years. And and Telkom is, as I said, very well positioned. What would you say is at the core that has driven Telkom in this changing landscape? And I guess it's staying ahead with the times. I mean, remember those undersea cables, how you guys have evolved in the partnerships. But what is at the core of your growth and this incredible success you've seen in the telecom sector?
I think Aki, I'll take on the lead that I mean, as you say, the evolution of Telkom, and the core to that is the backbone of connectivity of the entire country. So Telkom has about 170,000 kilometers of fiber laid in the ground, which covers basically from Cape Town all the way, and the rings around the entire country. So that's key. So from the undersea cables that come in all the way around the entire country. So it's important that we have key nodes that cover it's almost like if you take the big N1 and all the N's and the M's that cover out, and then the tributaries that come off the main freeway. So from the R to the M's to the even small roads, that is the map that you can measure of what Telkom fiber looks like in the entire country. So in simple terms, if you take Telkom's fiber network and where it covers, within a 5-kilometer radius, we can cover up to 7 million homes in the country of fiber connectivity. So that is the expanse of the fiber connectivity rate that Telkom has. Supporting that as well is we've got 10 data centers that sit in the Telkom infrastructure, of which 3 are actually category 4 data centers. So that is also a big key area that says you've got those nodes as well, where we carry the engine of that. And I think that's enabled, for instance, if you look at Telkom Mobile's reach, that's why Telkom Mobile could offer such good data coverage, because being a late entrant in the space, Telkom Mobile was built as a data predominantly proposition. So key to that is almost over 80% of Telkom Mobile's towers are covered with fiber, which means that if you get high data demand, the backhaul obviously is important to have fiber, not microwave necessarily, so that as you get more demand, you can then just open up those pipes to give better speeds and better quality. And it's not just to the end user, but if you look at corporates, I mean, calls like these consume a lot of data, right? And you don't want the latency, you want the speed, you want the quality. So it means that as the customer demand increases with fiber, it's just a little toggle of a switch, and off you get more capacity and more speeds. So it's then you've built ahead of the demand of what the country requires. Because as you know, to dig up fiber and to lay that out, it takes time. But the demand is now becoming instant. So we had to invest ahead of what the country's demand is. And now that's beginning to yield fruit. That's why we're saying our positioning of Telkom as being an Infraco is that we've geared ourselves to be the digital backbone to provide what the country needs of its future digital infrastructure growth.
Wow, that's it's amazing when you think about where we are. And as you said, this call that's happening right now, I'm recording this video in 4K, and at the end of this, it's going to be a 2 gig sized file, and yours is going to be pretty similar. I mean, it's extraordinary to think that we're doing this in 2024. Literally 5 years ago, you probably wouldn't have been able to do this kind of video quality. And the future is growing even faster. You know, when you look at AI and the data demands on AI, and of course you look at virtual reality and that sort of thing, we're in for some very interesting times. What would you say are the most significant challenges and opportunities that you foresee for Telkom and the South African telecom industry in the next year? What do you see as going to be happening in 2024?
I think what's key for us is, let's bar the obvious operational issues that we all face. I think everybody can lament load shedding, etc. And yes. I think the South Africans and as South Africans, we're resilient. We adapt to those, we change, we move. I think for key is how we work collectively with regulation to make sure that how do we craft a regulatory ecosystem that actually works to saying, how do we proactively manage the challenges that face the country properly? And I think for us, and I'm enjoying the engagements that we're having with the regulator to say, going forward, what do we craft? Because, some of these regulations that we draw are almost 20 years. And it's quite difficult to think 20 years when 20 years is happening yesterday in terms of just how digital migration operates. And I think for us as an industry as well, is to say the collaboration, key development across key industries, and also looking at how we develop talent across the country, and ingesting things like AI and coding and education from the youngest and earliest stages. It's important because creating and developing talent at young ages is quite critical. We have to make sure that we are building a digital economy and a digital education and digital future generations. I mean, you and I are greyheads. We've been in this industry for the past 30 years. The young guns who are coming in are the future, and we have to make sure that we are developing a future and an ecosystem that's ready for these youngsters who are coming in. And how do we make sure that the investment that we are putting into this country makes sure that we are leapfrogging and making sure that South Africa takes its rightful place? I mean, you compare ourselves, and I don't want to even look further than the continent. If we look at the likes of Kenya, we look at the likes of Rwanda, we need to catch up quite speedily in terms of what those countries are doing in digital ecosystem. You look at Rwanda is distributing medicines with drones into rural areas. Kenya is setting itself up as an IT ecosystem in East Africa. And we need to play a far stronger role as Southern Africa in terms of really launching South Africa as a bigger portion of playing, not just most probably 4IR, but 5IR as the central hub for that. And I think it's important that if you look at the capacity and the investment that's being put in South Africa, look at the data centers that's being put in here. Look at how much investment is coming into the country. Every day, a massive investment is coming in from international players into our market. But let's make sure that we, as South Africa, lead in that and are not being led by foreign investment, to make sure that there's South African-based SA Inc. IT driving this thought leadership into the country. The infrastructure investment is key. How do we make sure that we partner and protect the infrastructure as well? Because that's quite key for us. And I think it's big for South Africa and the industry as a whole to play a far bigger role in driving that agenda collectively. That for me is quite key. Market consolidation is the new theme. I mean, we see it happening globally. And how do we make sure that regulation supports and drives that? Because in a market where we are seeing the economic pressures that we are under, investment has to make sure that it yields rewards for shareholders, but it's also responsible investment, right? But those key things is not to forget the social agenda. Of course, the new theme is ESG, right? How do we make sure that everything we're doing is in line with ESG? But AI must not be seen as a threat. because when you start thinking AI, people think, oh, we're going to lose jobs, etc. But how do we enhance productivity? How do we make sure that we enhance, for instance, effectiveness in what we do? And how do we work smarter, not harder, to make sure that we can embrace AI as an industry or as a country to make sure that we make things easier for the end user and for our country. So I see it more as an exciting opportunity for really the ITC industry and the telecoms industry to play a far more leading role. We can't have the elderly queuing up, for example, for grants. The elderly should be able to receive their grants at home and get their groceries at home and get all those payments done at home. And we as an industry should be able to step up and make sure that their lives are made easier. And it's possible. It's not something that's far away. And how can we play a far more active role in society, in the tools that we have available to us? And I could go on and on and on, because it's something I'm quite passionate about. This regard, Aki.
No, Serame, you're very passionate about this, and I can hear it, and I've known this about you for many, many years. And also, of course, I'm so glad you touched on the skills, because it's not just here in South Africa where there's a skills shortage. This is a global skills shortage in the ICT sector, in IT. And I think that it presents such a unique opportunity for us in South Africa, and corporates have got to make the effort to upskill people and really grow that skills gap and reduce that skills gap rather that we have, because once we do that, it just opens up so many more opportunities in the sector that we're talking about. Can you share any recent developments or plans that you've got at Telkom that you are particularly excited about? I know that you can't talk about a lot of things, but come on, Serame, give us a sneak preview into what you've been designing at Telkom.
Well, I think, actually, we've communicated to the market at length in terms of our evolution towards being an Infraco, and I think this is yielding some short-term results for us. I think that the first part, of course, was the disposal of our towers, and I think people think, okay, why are you disposing towers if you're going to be an Infraco? And I think it's good to actually set a bit of clarity on this, because the key thing for us was realizing that, okay, what are we strong at? What are we not strong at? And if you look at our tower codes, we've got about, let's say, under 3,000 active towers in an ecosystem of about 30,000 odd towers. It's not something that you're going to be commercially competitive in. That's the disposal of the towers. And I think that transaction is proceeding quite well. What's equally important then, it allows us to actually inject cash into really investing in areas where we're strong at, which is really our fiber business and our data center business and our mobile business. And that's what's key in helping us shape that growth. And what we've seen, we're releasing our results I think on Monday. And we've seen that growth coming through quite positively. Our mobile business, and together with our fiber business, we've seen very good results come through from that, in that the data-led strategy is starting to bear the fruit of that investment, because that investment that we're making for the past 5 years in investing in fiber, investing in a data-led strategy, has allowed us to be resilient. We are now be able to compete quite aggressively without being price driven, but really offering more value to our customers. And that's what customers are appreciating, that you can actually offer good value. And we are continuing to drive this growth. Our expansion into fiber, particularly in fiber to the home, is yielding a fact that we're now getting the highest connectivity rate. Because for us, what I'm driving the team is really not about just the homes passed, because homes passed for me is almost like, it's like ego, it's like revenue. You say it's, for me, it's like not just passing the homes, but connecting the homes. And what we're seeing in Openserve is the highest connectivity rate, because yes, you've passed the homes, but have you connected them? And that's important for me, because our connectivity rate is one of the highest. Because what we quite do, because we can punch with both hands, where we start seeing a high usage in, for instance, LTE at home, it signals to us that, hold on, Aki's house is using big LTE home usage, show your fixed wireless router. It means that her house has potential for fiber. So instead of over investing in that base station to increase capacity, rather put fiber down their street, because then you can move that household into fiber. First of all, with fiber, you can offer better speeds and higher capacity. And despite what anybody can say with 5G, there's no 5G that will beat fiber on speed and capacity. So it means you're doing far better utilization of your capex, because once you lay that fiber down, you can offer that whole street endlessly, better speeds, better capacity. You can then move that tower capacity to offer more coverage in other rural areas and expand. So you actually can now utilize your assets much, much better and be more smarter in terms of your return on investments, which is a good way of then how do we spend your very limited capex pocket by using both assets quite well. So this is almost like your fixed wireless convergence working much, much better. Like I said, in terms of even the work in fiber, I talked about this exciting project of fiber to the room. Now, what we're piloting, and maybe if you talk nicely to your friend, Mr. Bierkes there in Openserve, he's piloting with the fiber to the room, and he actually was quite sneaky when he did the thing in my house. For my son, who's a gamer, his fiber to the room, he's giving him 1 terabit per second speeds because he's a gamer.
What?
So he's given the gamer 1 terabit per speed in his room. So I hardly ever see my son. And that's a pilot he's doing. So that's the kind of things that we are launching. Again, once you start at 1 tera, obviously you can go higher and higher. So those are the kind of speeds that we are now be able to launch to the market. And I'm quite excited to say that, real life example, it's working. The only time I see my son is when I see a Uber Eats motorbike hop in to drop off his lunch. So
okay,
these are the kind of things that I'm excited to say that we are now able to offer fiber to the room, so you can actually fiber up your household, and we can offer dedicated speeds per room.
Wow.
Up to 1 terabyte per room is some of the exciting things that we bring to the market, Aki.
That's very cool. Mr. Bierkes? Yes, Mr. Bierkes, I'm talking to you. I'm waiting. Listen, that's very exciting. I mean, we've spoken about 2024. We've spoken about what's happening at the moment. You're very much one of these people in the industry that's very much a forward thinker. You see things into the future, and you've got to be, because you are the CEO of Telkom. You are the CEO of one of the biggest telecoms on the continent. How do you envision telecoms shaping the future of connectivity in South Africa over the next 5 to 10 years? I know it's difficult to predict so far ahead, but I imagine, as you alluded to now, that fiber speeds and fiber to the room, it's going to become a common thing. And I imagine that things like 6G, even though it hasn't been defined yet, is on the horizon, right?
Definitely it is. And I think what's important for us, Aki, is that all this wonderful technology we talk of, especially your AI and IoT, etc., the underlying bedrock of that is connectivity. We have to get the basic connectivity to that. When you talk of exciting things that we're talking of. So if we take things like your mining and all those exciting industries, part of the things that we're doing, for instance, in BCX is we are actually in the process of piloting your 5G private networks for certain verticals and industries, because that's the first enabler. So if you talk about IoT in industries and AI in industries, you need to get those machines to be connected so they can talk to each other, be it 6G, 6.5G, or 7G. So one of the first things that we're doing is building private networks for those industries, so that, be it an automotive industry, a mine, a food manufacturing, we are then building bespoke connectivity solutions for those industries first. Talking not just about putting industries, but things like in-building solutions. You'd be amazed that that's quite a critical thing. In corporate offices, you need to have in-building solutions. A lot of our offices were built with big, thick concrete walls. So a lot of our guys have been doing work on in-building solutions. That's the first layer, to get the connectivity solutions right. Because then as the technology evolves, you've got the connectivity in there. The second part then is the smarts that come to attach, that those machines to machine can talk to each other, and the smarts can come into there. To your point again, originally, of once you've got those connectivities, what are we doing for the skill set? Because data is one thing. The interpretation, the analytics, and the understanding of how you then get that data is important. The data science is quite important. And I think you've been privy to seeing all the work that's been done through SATNEC. The number of PhDs that through Telkom's involvement in SATNEC has produced. I mean, you've seen some of the stuff that those young kids are producing. You and I walk it out there, we've got to understand what they're saying. But the work that they've done in robotics and analytics is amazing. It's world class. And it's really how if we could imagine produce 4 or 5 types of the capacity of the volume of students you get out of SATNEC, those are the things that really excite me, because that is what is really going to deliver the future of the ramping up South Africa's capacity and capability of delivering that work. Because it's interesting, if you look at all the helicopter heads or the smarts that produce the biggest papers in the US as such, they come out of India, not out of the US, right? If you look at some of the work that those students do out of the work that's been sponsored by SATNEC and Telkom, that's the kind of skill set that we do have at home. And it's for us to create, as Telkom, the bigger platforms to produce more and more of those students so that we can deliver more of that work for South Africa, to produce for South Africa and potentially to take to the world.
Yeah. Listen, I wish we could have 10 more SATNECs running across the country, because the caliber of people that produces that come out of SATNEC. I mean, I've been involved with the event for almost 2 decades now, and it's extraordinary to think that even when we had copper and how they changed ADSL to maximize the speeds, and the kind of stuff that these kids are working on is so ahead of its time that we kind of reap the benefits in the next few years, which is just wonderful to see. But I couldn't agree with you more. We do need more of that happening. And I think corporate has a big responsibility to play to nurture that talent across the country. We can't just rely on events like SATNEC. There've got to be a number of those kind of events that either focus on AI or focus on, virtual reality, whatever it might be. But Serame Taukobong, the Chief Executive at Telkom, it's absolutely wonderful to chat to you again and get your insights into where we're going over the next few years. And certainly from a Telkom perspective, it sounds like you've got your hands full and you've got a very, very exciting journey carved out ahead.
Aki, thank you so much for the opportunity. I look forward to another engagement with you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.